Hello, everybody. Welcome to Building Blocks of Cloud Native Infrastructure. My name is William Bell, and today I am joined by Andy King, Partner Solution Architect at SUSE, and Pedja Alexic, Team Lead and Systems Engineer at Glimpse. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me. Right. So let's get started. Today, I want to start by taking a time to really look through some of these future forward cloud native trends that we're observing, as well as Gartner, and in this case, the CNCF, and really trying to understand that customers and organizations are looking at this idea of being cloud native or cloud first as a guiding principle for their company into 2024, 2025, and looking at how they can take their execution of their digital footprint and take that approach and modify it so that they can deliver on top of cloud native architectures and technologies. Meanwhile, we see Kubernetes essentially taking over as the mainstream platform for running and managing containers. And ultimately, organizations are finding a lot of different ways to begin their Kubernetes journey. Some folks, we see a lot of developers doing it at the desktop level, and the corporation hasn't really adopted Kubernetes at that point. We see folks using all-in managed paths Kubernetes services like AWS EKS or Azure AKS. But increasingly, what we're also seeing is organizations looking towards or companies, both infrastructure platforms and software ISVs, that can deliver the technologies necessary to execute a Kubernetes as a service capability for that enterprise. And ultimately, they're taking this shift to the cloud, and it's really trying to adopt this mindset change inside of the organizations, because if they don't, there's a severe risk that their technology services internally may disrupt it. And for small businesses, it could mean actual business disruption because they're not able to compete essentially with their competitive cohort, and really trying to change their organization in such a way that they can be better prepared for what the future brings from a technology services perspective. And so ultimately, what we're observing is this kind of broad sweeping evaluation of Kubernetes, with a beginning with a start of seeing Kubernetes in production and widespread adoption. Some of these statistics can be slightly misleading, right? Saying 74% of companies researched, or companies that were surveyed are using Kubernetes in production. The question doesn't ask to what extent, right? Like ultimately, I think we could all be very confident in saying that traditional applications still far outpace microservices applications. And ultimately, it's going to take a while for containerization and application refactoring to happen. And I think now we're pretty settled that Kubernetes is the future in terms of the platform that those containers will kind of sit on top of or be managed by. Whereas even that was kind of maybe up in the air 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And what we're starting to see more now is this execution of a hybrid or application anywhere approach, distributed computing. It goes by a lot of names, and everybody has their own kind of idea of what this looks like. Edge applications. But I think that what we're starting to understand is that containers and applications are not just going to run in public cloud. And increasingly, we're we're finding that organizations have needs to deploy and run applications and containers in many different areas, in multiple public clouds, in private clouds or infrastructure services internally, as well as in IoT and edge devices, right? And so there's a ton of things happening on these platforms, a ton of different types of use cases. We're going to talk through some of those later, but ultimately run the application anywhere, on any cloud, any device, and do it in such a way that it provides you an enhanced resiliency and flexibility that you don't have as an organization in traditional application architecture. That's the reason why. That's why do this at all, essentially. And so, kind of stole my own slide, but when you look at the idea of cloud native infrastructure or containers and container management platforms, what you're looking towards really is these kind of bucketed points, right? You want to either become more cost effective or remain cost effective in your execution. You're looking at ways that you can build applications that are immune or have a muted impact by the cloud vendor that is helping you manage them or running them for you. And ultimately, you get applications that are able to scale in ways that was either impossible or very costly in the past. And I think, as you're going to see from our friends at SUSE Rancher, we're trying to make all of this stuff easy to manage as well, which is a really big challenge, right? Infinite scale, run it anywhere, oh yeah, and easy to manage, right? And that's some kind of somewhat counterintuitive, but those guys are doing an amazing job, and you're going to see a little bit of how that works here in a little bit. And ultimately maintain either the same uptime or better uptime than you had before. And I do think a lot of organizations are executing on that, right? Because generally, if they've done the right things in their application planning, whether it's a new application development or a refactoring, then by nature, those applications are just infinitely more resilient than they were in the past. And they rely on a lot less things to be resilient. And then, I think I don't think we have any slideware about this, but what we're talking about is increasingly containers are starting off inside of hypervisor-based environments, and there are a lot of or some good reasons to run containers on hypervisors. But I think a lot of it's just been done from an ease perspective, right? Like Amazon built EKS on top of AWS EC2 because it was just easier for them. I think that's kind of what I would take it. Definitely when you look at enterprises that are running Hyper-V or VMware or something like that, while they may not be wanting to pay VMware for the actual container management capabilities, the idea that they can run those containers on top of virtual machines and manage them with open source technologies is a very powerful kind of idea or mindset. But I think this slide says MSPs, but I think when you look at both sides of the equation, both managed service providers and end users, we see a huge commonality around why why the organizations are struggling to adopt Kubernetes and or cloud native infrastructure in general, containerization, etc. And I know this color code is off here, but skills still trump everything. And that's an industry problem as well as a microservices problem. But ultimately, having the right skill sets on the right types of IT infrastructure, modern IT infrastructure, are the biggest boundaries to adoption. And then you start to look at, incompatible applications, and how do I kind of adopt these platforms, as well as security. But I do think that on an interesting note, I think that security has been earlier to the table with containerization and microservices and Kubernetes by proxy than a lot of things in the past, right? It took a long time for security to catch up to hypervisors on virtual networks, a really long time. And luckily, in a lot of cases, Kubernetes and or the platforms and the ecosystem around it have adopted a lot of the same types of underlying kind of hardcore infrastructure capabilities or technologies. So like one of the biggest disruptive things that could have happened in Kubernetes landscape would have been like abandoning VXLAN as a kind of an overlay network. And I know that it's not 100% in terms of all platforms across everything, but you know, VXLAN has become a very common capability inside of the Kubernetes ecosystem. And a lot of IT people had already kind of, network services people had modified their capabilities to kind of have this VXLAN introspection capability. That's an example, but you know, I think that a lot of great choices from an architecture were made. And so when you know, people are asked, you know, what are you trying to accomplish, right? When you approach this idea of changing or adopting cloud native infrastructure solutions or changing applications to be more cloud native or microservices oriented, I think these are all valid, right? But you know, that top one, it's so much more, right? I think it's like for me, it is maintenance and monitoring and automation, but also that for them, that means resiliency and deployment speed and all kinds of other things. I think that's what people are trying to kind of get towards. But I could almost like clump all three of these top reasons into kind of a one idea of why containerization in Kubernetes is great. And then some of these other ones are just kind of like great extras that you can get. And increasingly stuff like removing vendor dependencies, I think it's like neutrality, like having my application be vendor neutral is becoming a very interesting value proposition for organizations. And I do think a lot of it has to do with this global reach idea as well, because increasingly organizations are trying to push applications to random places, right? Whether that's far-flung locales, different types of devices, leverage them kind of simultaneously, whether that's, you know, in a manufacturing floor and in a centralized cloud platform. And you know, none of the public clouds for sure, and not really anyone is set up to just take any type of application and put it anywhere. And it's not really good for you if you're locked into that vendor forever in your application. So these all have a lot of interdependent ideas around them, but kind of each hold their own place in the value ecosystem. And so if you're an end user, or we do have some MSPs on the call, you know, if you're looking at this idea of how you can build out your skill sets and your portfolio of applications and delivery models internally, right? I think that these are a great place to start a practice, whether that's an internal or business practice, and just begin looking at how can I plan my next application to be microservices oriented and containerized, right? You may not be ready to go all in on a complete DevOps methodology, but can you find ways to make your application more modular, easier to deploy, and more vendor neutral, right? Can you deploy infrastructure, the actual hard bits, with automation that provides reliability, and build that infrastructure as code competency in your organization? And as you're developing, can you continuously iterate and deliver that software to your consumer, whether that consumer is internal or external, in such a way that they can see consistent improvement from you as an organization, and that provides a level of perceived excellence. I'm not saying it's not true; it can be real excellence, but ultimately, people like instant gratification, right? And so you could build fantastic, feature-rich, waterfall developed applications, but you do have long periods of time where like the customer is not getting anything from you, right? And you do run greater risk. So if you can find a way to kind of adopt this idea of integration and delivery on demand of your code and your software applications, you're in a much better place for your teams to see how things are performing, as well as your customers to see the changes in your application. And then I think security is wrapping all of this, right? Or, like I said earlier, they're at the table clearly at this point. Organizations are focused on marrying security to microservices and containerization, and ultimately doing it right, what they got wrong the first time. And so we're going to talk a lot about what PNAP's doing from an infrastructure perspective, and I'm actually going to get a little demo of this here in a bit. But just trust that PNAP is looking at how we can marry our infrastructure services capabilities to these concepts, and how we are partnering with folks to make the experience better for everyone, right? And I think that ultimately what we're going to see from the team at SUSE is how this is working for their customers, and then I'm going to bring it back and show you how this works with SUSE Rancher and us together. I want to introduce Andy from the Partner Solutions team over at SUSE. Take it away, Andy.
Thank you for the introduction. So my name's Andy King. I'm a Partner Solution Architect at SUSE. Let me just move on to the next slide. Apologies. So quick snapshot about SUSE. SUSE has been powering thousands of enterprise customers, mission critical workloads for almost 30 years now. It's actually our 30th birthday in September, so 29 years old, and we've been powering loads of enterprises. Just some fast facts, we're powering the largest FinServ companies, the largest aerospace, largest automotives, and largest pharmaceutical companies. And we work with the top 5 technology firms. So if you look at our partnerships to the right-hand side, you see that we have partnerships with AWS, Microsoft, Google, also Alibaba and ARM. So we are working with the hyperscalers or the hosted Kubernetes providers. We also have independent hardware vendors that we certify and do our engineering of our solutions on. So they consist of IBM, Dell, etc. So the list is more extensive than this, but we've just got some logos to show you. And just to add, in terms of industry initiatives and associations, we're working with the CNCF, Linux Foundation, and many more. So if you're looking at edge technology or automotive association with 5G, we are part of those associations collaborating to support the open source community. Just to note as well, SUSE acquired Rancher in 2020. So we will talk more around Rancher. So we have many partners, 15,000 customers across all industries using our products. And once again, that's in finance, information technology, media, healthcare, etc. So some of these logos, hopefully you recognize. Some of these are hopefully partners that you're looking to work with in the future, or some of them you just recognize, such as Disney for your children who do streaming. We are involved in all of these companies here for Kubernetes and for Linux as well. So it's very important to note that SUSE is extensively embedded in all these companies and many more. So SUSE Rancher, our unique approach is we understand and built our product as a multi-cluster management tool. We understand it's a multi-cluster world. So what does that mean? If you look around your organization, you will realize you have many departments who are using different clouds. They're building their own distributions of Kubernetes or have used many different distributions. So we understand that business will be using multiple clusters, whether it be for test, dev, pre-prod, pre-production, production, DR. How do you treat all of those Kubernetes distribution as a first-class citizen? So if it's EKS, AKS, GKE, along with vanilla Kubernetes, how do you manage them under one single pane of glass? And that's where we bring the value in Kubernetes. So it's treating all of those Kubernetes distributions as a first-class citizen. Just to add, we also support importing of any CNCF certified Kubernetes distributions, so not only our own, we can manage hosted Kubernetes and any other CNCF distribution. So that gives us the ability to create new clusters, to have a full lifecycle management of hosted Kubernetes clusters, destroy clusters or manage them and just make sure they're all healthy. And we bring an open source approach to that. So with the value of everything, this gives us a unique approach to make sure the valuing is in Kubernetes management, and we're treating all Kubernetes distributions as one. And just to add, we're open and interoperable. SUSE Rancher is an open and interoperable company. We believe that our solutions should be so. So we give you the choice of what we call SUSE Hybrid IT or SUSE Edge. So pick the solution that best fits your use case, your need, your vertical. So if it's just SUSE Rancher for Kubernetes management and you're going to use hosted Kubernetes, you don't need a runtime, then you don't need RKE. If you have your own storage, distributed block storage or CSI storage provider, you don't have to take Longhorn, or you can choose ours. And once again, when we move to cloud ready and we look at our enterprise or business critical Linux, SUSE has the ability to manage mixed Linux environments as well with SUSE Manager. And we can also supply our own operating system, which is known as SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. So these can be in bundles or a la carte, pick and choose what you need. We're open and interoperable. So this is my favorite slide. This is the SUSE Rancher cube cake, or as a layer cake. This will give you a view of the land and the features and capabilities that we have. So we do provide developer services. So we can provide a Rancher desktop as a replacement for Docker desktop. We also can provide SUSE based container images, so container images. And we have a Pinio for development and deployment of engines and applications as well. Now, when we look at the SUSE Rancher layer, we have the ability to do container security. We also have the ability to provide apps in a marketplace or a Rancher catalog. And for each cluster, we can monitor and have observability of those clusters by provisioning Grafana and Prometheus, which gives us the monitoring, alerting, and dashboard observability. As mentioned, we can provide storage with Longhorn as well. But one of the things that make it an enterprise container management stack, in my view, and in many's, is having the ability to bring in different authentication providers. So I always believe if you've got a Microsoft Active Directory, it's enterprise straight away. So the ability to bring in Active Directory, SAML or Okta and many more as an authentication provider and be able to provide different access level based cluster and namespace. So RBAC control is very important at scale and within an enterprise. And we do that by policy enforcement and governance. So we're the ability to audit clusters, make sure they're meeting, conforming to certain standards, so CIS benchmarks. And as mentioned, I talked about RBAC control, network policies, etc. One of the ways that we simplify Kubernetes and Kubernetes management is the ability to do Kubernetes version upgrades in a few clicks, continuous delivery with a product we call Fleet, and the ability to use infrastructure providers such as VMware or EC2 or virtual machines from Azure. We can provide cluster templates and enforce those configs and node pool management. And that gives us the ability to provision new clusters and maintain the lifecycle of those clusters. So once again, we can create, we can import, we can manage those clusters. And if you look at the Kubernetes layer, once again, looking at hybrid IT, from the cloud, we have the capability to to provide hosted Kubernetes or managed hosted Kubernetes with Amazon EKS, Azure AKS, or Google GKE. So from a cloud stance, we have those capabilities. We also can do virtual machines, cloud instances as well in the cloud. And at the data center, so on-prem, we can provide RKE. Once again, we can import any CNCF standard of Kubernetes as well. So we're able to maintain Kubernetes at the data center. Also in the cloud. So this is where we're talking about multi-cluster, multi-cloud. And we also have the capability to run K3S, which is our lightweight Kubernetes version. It's CNCF and was donated to the CNCF. We are still the main contributors, but it's widely used extensively when it comes to development, branch, and edge technologies as well. So the ability to run at the edge with a lightweight Kubernetes distribution is very important to many organizations. And one of our key benefits of, once again, being open and interoperable is making your choice an operating system. We understand that, SUSE might not be the choice for one particular customer, it might be for another. So we give you the capability to run Red Hat Linux, Ubuntu Linux, Oracle Linux, Amazon Linux. Make your choice an operating system. We can supply SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. However, if you wanted to provision one cluster with Red Hat in the cloud, you could. If you wanted to use SUSE Linux on-prem, you could. If you wanted to use Ubuntu with K3S at the edge, you can. And you can have that under one single pane of glass, managing all those clusters, observing all those clusters, and having a full dashboard view of those clusters. So it's very important. These are the capabilities that we bring within our feature set. So if we refer back to a few slides where we're talking about the complexity of onboarding, security, IT structure, and the skills needed to manage multiple clouds, we are essentially removing all of those headaches and allowing you to be able to provision Kubernetes at ease. So putting it all together, the IT ops teams, they'll be provisioning Kubernetes, maintaining centrally control and visibility, so providing cluster as a service or namespace as a service. They will be managing the scope of capacity, the amount of nodes, etc., delegating permissions and access control. And then you'll have your DevOps teams who will be doing continuous delivery, canary, blue-green deployments, deploying applications. So you've got IT ops and DevOps working together using the SUSE Rancher product, where we provide shared service with an ecosystem of catalogs, so being able to provision applications, being able to use app packaging tools such as Helm and operators, and then providing the logging and monitoring with FluentD, Grafana, and Service Mesh Istio. So we bring it all together, and that gives you the capability to run infrastructure as a service in Kubernetes, allow your developers to choose and pick the right tools and deploy clusters for the right need, wherever that should be across the hybrid IT infrastructure, so cloud, on-prem, or the edge. So anything in the green on the left-hand side that we provision, we provide an SLA. So SUSE Rancher will provide an SLA. So if there's any issues with Helm or Fleet in deploying applications, you can call our customer support and they will help you. Grafana, Prometheus, FluentD, if there's anything wrong with your dashboards or any issues, we have an SLA for that. So with enterprise support, we will provide an SLA and respond to those issues. Also, we're managing Open Policy Agent, OPA. We're also providing SIS benchmarks as well, and NuVector full lifecycle container security as well for additional subscription. But we're also providing support for different CNIs as well, Flannel Canal, Istio, along with our Kubernetes runtime, so RKE, K3S, and RKE2, Longhorn, etc. We're also supporting Docker, along with Containerd. And if you look to the right-hand side, we have a list of certified ready partners and many more. So we can't fit them all on the screen today, but we do have a list of ready partners who have certified and have reference architecture based on our platform. So hopefully some of these logos are notable and you use them today, such as Splunk or Datadog, Sysdig, etc. Or maybe you're using Hewlett-Packard enterprise storage. You hopefully be using some of the clouds here. You might want to be using Windows or managing Windows containers. We have the ability to support those as well, and we support Ubuntu and Red Hat as mentioned. and the different infrastructure providers as well. So VMware, the hyperscalers, OpenStack, and NuVector as well. So you can see where we're very complete in our features, and we are supporting many different vendors and bringing and collaborating as one, and as a true open source, giving you that choice and integration to be able to pick the solutions that best meet your need. So when we look at Gartner Peer Insights, we have 4.5 stars, one of the highest star ratings in terms of the Kubernetes sector. And we also have a 95% recommendations as well. So 95% of people would recommend who are using SUSE Rancher. So if you look to the right side, you'll see that we actually outweigh our competitors vastly. And you know that is testament to how well the product is engineered, how good it is, and why we see it as a multi-cluster world and the capabilities that are needed to manage Kubernetes in a multi-cluster environment. And just to finalize and recap, you know, our unique approach to the market is 100% open source, enterprise subscription plan if needed. Don't hold back on, we don't hold back on any features. You know, Kubernetes is the computing standard. That's where it is going. So we embrace the cloud, we embrace hosted Kubernetes, we're embracing edge computing as well, distributed computing with K3S, and innovation that push the market forward. So multi-cluster management with Rancher, and we have many more other open source projects along with K3S, Rio, Longhorn, Samarana as well. So you know, innovation, and we're pushing that forward. And developer experience as well, once again mentioned, you know, one single pane of glass is UX centric development. There is no docs to install, it's a quick install. You know, zero consulting time for implementation, and we give you the freedom of choice of tools and framework, as you saw from the what I call the cube cake, the layer cake, of showing you the choices of integration products that you can make and the supported tools that we have around our product line.
Awesome, Andy. Thank you for recapping all the technology that SUSE and the recently acquired Rancher ecosystem of products can provide customers and partners. We are impressed every single day by the work that you guys are doing. And I wanted to make this a little bit more special by bringing in one of our customers at phoenixNAP, a social media company called Glimpse. They're doing a lot of work in the online gaming area right now. I think recently actually got a big Minecraft gamer to join their platform. So I will let Pedja from Glimpse talk about this slide a little bit and tell us kind of why they got Rancher and how they're using it internally and how it's helping them.
Thank you, William, for introduction. My name is Predrag. I'm team lead at Glimpse. So I'm going to give you some of the challenges that we had previously and how we're leveraging Rancher to solve and address those problems. So when I took these jobs approximately 4 or 5 years ago, it was made clear to me that this is going to be a modern company that's going to follow DevOps methodology, use microservices, and we are going to have plenty of container orchestrators. And my job is to deliver a platform to support that ambition. Because all of this was happening 5 or 4 years ago, none of the tools available in the DevOps ecosystem would do that for us, and we had to find a way, our own way, how to do it. So we spent approximately 5 or 6 months in intense development to build cluster orchestrator that's going to integrate easily with our underlying VM platform. In this case, it was vSphere, and we had success. We come to the point where we had highly available, fully automated Kubernetes clusters that work pretty good with our VM platform. But really soon, we started seeing problems. Like maintaining code base that was this big required me at some point allocating 99% of my time to approve even the smallest changes coming from the mainstream Kubernetes releases, and some major changes that would change how Kubernetes would work took me weeks to complete. and that eventually disabled me to work on other areas, so I started creating technical debt. So we tried to address that by hiring talents that would help me, but we soon found out that was nearly impossible. So these were two major challenges that we couldn't address. So I had a talk with smart people from phoenixNAP, and they told me, hey, why don't you take Rancher for a ride? So I did. And very soon we had working proof of concept. We created a case study. We made that code publicly available on the phoenixNAP GitHub page. And we decided to give it a try. So we moved some of the workloads there. And while doing that migration, we saw many small wins, but the two major wins for us that we couldn't address before, now with Rancher we can. So bear in mind, even this new approach that we are following is also requiring a certain degree of technical skills and few weeks to complete. So BMC and the guys at phoenixNAP solved this all for you in just few lines of code in 1 or 2 Terraform modules, and you would have a working cluster in a few minutes. So imagine how cool is that? And
yeah. Awesome, Peja, dude. Thank you so much for the lead in, and I actually I'm gonna show everybody how that can actually be executed. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the solution that we've developed, and certainly in our conversations, Peja, it wasn't very hard to get Rancher running, right? Like it's certainly not an ultra difficult thing to do. However, if you are trying to deploy it in such a way that is highly available and kind of bulletproof production grade, you can spend quite a bit of time on that and making sure that you have all your certificates right and all of the configurations and authentication mechanisms configured and all those things kind of done in such a way that makes sense for your organization. At PNAP, we wanted to help our customers take this great technology, marry it up to our infrastructure service, and essentially allow our customers to deploy advanced configured HA Rancher management clusters and associated worker or workload clusters, all in a couple clicks, or as Peja mentioned, an API call or a single Terraform call, right? And so I'm actually going to show you what that looks like in reality. And so if you take a look, I've logged in with my demo account here. I already have some clusters configured, so you'll see the clusters that you have built and a lot of details about them in the portal, including kind of their underlying node infrastructure. But also, you can go and create one from scratch. And here you get the option to create just the Rancher components if you want to tool around with Rancher and try to understand it and learn it, right? You can get a very predictable delivery of what it should look like in production for you, both in a single node or multi-node fashion, or you can choose to get a complete production ready cluster that has a highly available management control plane deployed on your behalf. And so these software components don't cost anything, right? The software components are layered on top of the infrastructure components, of which we have a lot of options so that you can find something that works for your organization, right? And so if you look at the management cluster first, you have the option to use either a single node or a 3-node cluster for the management infrastructure. And then you have a ton of instance types to choose from depending on how much you want that Rancher management infrastructure to scale. Now, what we do is we do limit the types that you can click here so that you don't inadvertently use really overpriced instances to deploy what ostensibly is a management infrastructure. But we do still provide you choice. And I think the choice is robust enough that you can see a lot of different scale or ideas of scale for your environment. And then once you've actually chosen what that looks like, you can go to the next screen and you can choose a worker cluster to be deployed in any other region or the region that you deployed in the first place. And then at that point, you have access to the entire array of instances that we offer as an organization: dual socket, large instances, single socket boxes, high network, high memory, high CPU instances. So there's a ton of options available for you as the customer or partner. And then we basically begin collecting details from you, the organization, as to what you want it to be called, right? Like how the management cluster itself, what do you want that cluster to be called, right? And so I'll just put Rancher Management here. And then the workload cluster, we'll just call workload. And then you have the ability at that point to configure a number of kind of advanced configuration options that Rancher provides during setup, all through this kind of WYSIWYG editor. Fill out the form and you're ready to go. And once you click Create Kubernetes Cluster, you're going to get, in this case, a single node management cluster with a 3-node worker cluster. And all of that will be delivered to you in 25 minutes, right? Start to finish. And from there, you can instantly begin using kubectl and deploying applications. So I think that is truly the power of what we've been working on together. This solution is in its 3rd iteration currently, and we continue every single day to add more capabilities to this solution. We did just recently add auto recognition of Rancher workloads. So in the one that I had deployed earlier, I had this as my management cluster. This was the original workload cluster that was deployed. I deployed workload 2 through our integration, which is our Rancher node driver that's automatically configured once you deploy Rancher via our solution. That node driver allows you to go create more clusters, expand clusters, or auto expand clusters based on workloads, and it will actually provision infrastructure for you on demand. Super powerful. For MSPs, it can kind of be, business in a box of sorts, where you can just stamp them out over and over and over again. For end users, it's about reliability and predictability and ensuring you get something that is predictable in its configuration every time you want to roll out a new deployment, right? Now, with the management cluster, you may only deploy 1 of those or 2 of those, ever. But with those workloads, you may be deploying them downstream constantly, expanding them, etc. And all those operations, you get all those benefits that Andy talked about from a Rancher perspective and the things that Rancher's able to actually do for you as an organization. So I am going to go back to the PowerPoint here and kind of finish up some of this content. And so I'm going to launch a poll question. And I need some honest responses, right? We would love to talk to you about this. Actually, let me go back here. When I launch the poll, if you want to chat with either Rancher or phoenixNAP, please tell us so we can give you a call. I'm going to go ahead and click that. We'll do a demo. We'll get you a product sheet. We can help you understand your options around deployment of SUSE technologies as a whole on top of our platform. So absolutely would love to chat with you and see what makes sense for your organization. All right, we're gonna give that just a couple more seconds here. Make sure everybody, I hope everyone found this to be super valuable for their organization. So I'd love to talk with all of you guys more about it. All right. Let me close that poll down. And let's Definitely would be remiss if I did not talk about this, right? And so for the people on this call or the people that are viewing this webinar after the fact, if you contact our partner team at partner@phoenixNAP.com, they'll work with our sales team to ensure that you can get $150 credit for bare metal cloud so that you can go in, make some infrastructure, spin up some instances, and we will help you deploy that solution and support the deployment of that solution for a month for free. And so this is kind of a tag team effort from the SUSE team and the PNAP team. We're trying to fast track adoption of some of these capabilities. And I think the best way to do that is to help you prove it out for yourself. And I think that for me, somebody who's been a buyer of technology my entire career, that one thing that says, look, you can go make this right now instantly without talking to us, and then you can call us if you have questions on how it works or how it should work. That means we stand by the capabilities and the technologies that we have delivered. All right. So I want to give people a chance to get some Q&A in board. I'm going to take some of the questions that have already been put in, and hopefully the team at SUSE and or the team at Glimpse will be able to help us with some of these questions. And so, Andy, if you could, the first one that we got was, how much does Rancher cost? Is there a cost associated with the Rancher product?
There is, and it'd definitely be best to reach out to a local rep. I believe Michael is on this call, but if you reach out to phoenixNAP, or you can reach out to SUSE directly, we can give you some pricing more directly. But we charge for a Rancher management server and then for the Rancher nodes under management. So that's essentially the simplistic way of looking at of our cost model.
For sure.
That and also just that, and PNAP will be offering Rancher as part of their infrastructure, their bare metal infrastructure as well, and so they will also be able to offer pricing, and they have a unique pricing model specifically for service providers.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think that the unpacking that I'll do around that is, you know, if you want to just kick it around and try it out, whether it's on your desktop or in bare metal cloud, there's not going to be a cost for you to do that. But I think that ultimately, when you want to go roll this out into production, right, you're going to want to understand that there's someone there to help you when you need it. And that's what the PNAP team is providing. And that's what the SUSE team is here to provide and ensure that you are never left in a lurch with your production application if something was to go wrong, right? And so I think, like most things, open source technologies are amazing. They can do amazing things for you and your organization, but it's about the companies that are behind those open source technologies or the support infrastructure behind those core open source technologies that really truly make them powerful. All right, and the second question we had was for the Glimpse team. What did your infrastructure look like before Kubernetes, Peja? Can you tell us a little bit about kind of where you came from in terms of microservices, Kubernetes, and ultimately to SUSE Rancher?
I mean, I already talked a little about that. We started as a fully company that's like following those methodologies. So from the beginning, we started rolling out microservices. We had no other option than just use Kubernetes.
Fantastic. And you talked a little bit about how you started that, right? Which was just doing it all yourself from the command line, right?
Yes, because that was like 4 years ago, and there was no tools in the DevOps ecosystem that could help us to deliver that and integrate with our VM platform, with vSphere. Now with Rancher and with bare metal cloud, we would save, for example, if this was like true 4 years ago, we would save, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 months of development, just like to get that orchestrator working.
Yeah, I think that, you know, unfortunately, that's how it works in technology, right? Like, you know, if you're at the cutting edge, if you're really looking to get power via some type of early adoption that makes sense for your organization, sometimes it's hard, right? And I think that, you know, that's the general theme of what the PNAP and SUSE Rancher teams have been doing together for the last year, and what our mission looks like for the future is to take these concepts and try to make them easier, try to make them delivered instantaneously in a predictable way, and ensure that our organizations, or for partners on the call, your customers, have the right experiences, right? And I think that is, if we've done that, that's gonna be a game changer for lots of organizations. So I want to thank the team at SUSE for jumping on the call with us and talking about what we think is the best container management platform and increasingly the best container ecosystem software company out there in the market. I want to thank Pedro from Glimpse for taking time out of his day to come in and share some of those ideas that they had and their journey and what that looked like for them. And ultimately, I want to thank you for attending and listening to us talk about what we hope is the future of how infrastructure is deployed and how problems are solved for your organization. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.